so I'm like right in the middle of that. It's Michael Cooper, Bob McAdoo, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah.
I mean, when the draft, when David Stern announced my name on TV, because I didn't go to New York, we were watching TV. My brother and I were like running around the house like, man, can you believe this? Oh my God, you're going to LA. You're going to LA.
Wow.
So it was just like, that was the dream.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Daron Earlewine Podcast. Excited to sit down today with Ken Barlow. Ken, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Daron. Nice to be here.
Ken, producer Darren Cooper just made a joke before we started and said that I look like a very small person sitting next to you. I feel like I should have gotten some kind of cushion for this episode, something to not make me look as short as I am. I'm 5'9", although I think I'm shrinking. How tall are you, Ken?
I'm 6'9"-ish, so just over a foot taller than you are.
That's great, Ken. Thanks for reminding me. Ken, I'm excited to have you on the podcast. We're in this Death of the Dream, Resurrection of a Purpose story. And your story is one where you have experienced the death of a dream and you've seen God resurrect purpose in your life. You have a book that outlines it. We'll talk about that later. Mm-hmm. But I'm excited for your story because it is sports related. And I have 3 boys. They're all involved in youth sports. Mm-hmm. I coach youth sports. And so much of, I think, the pressure that comes along coaching youth is everybody has this dream, right? I mean,
right.
All my kids. I mean, my oldest son, he's getting recruited to play college football. And he doesn't think he's probably going to play pro, but he's excited about college football potentially. Now, my youngest is 11. He still thinks, that he's on his way to the NFL or something. Right. And you lived a lot of that, and you have learned so much. And so I'm just excited to glean from you today and for our audience to kind of get into it. And so welcome to the podcast, and let's jump into your story.
Yes. Well, thank you, Darren. It's really, again, my pleasure to be here. And you've hit right on it. I mean, as a young kid, when you start playing sports, actually you see it on TV. You see like even jerseys, and you see players, and you immediately start to identify as a young kid. So I think I can remember back to, I first started liking boxing because my dad was a big boxing fan. So I used to watch Ali and Frazier and all those guys. And then we moved to Cleveland, Ohio, and my brother and I gravitated toward the Cleveland Cavaliers back in the middle 70s when I was like 11 or 12.
Okay.
Probably like your kids.
Yep.
And we were just big fans. And we used to listen to the Cavs games on the radio. And we knew every player. We knew how they played, even without having like ESPN or all those things. But we were connecting with the players and the names and who they were, how they played. And, you just dream. It's just a dream. Like, wow, I would really like to do that. Yeah. And so that's where really, for me, where the dream really began in terms of basketball.
Yeah. But you were boxing was kind of the first your obsession, kind of, right? It
was. I really wanted to be a prize fighter. I don't know. I think it was my father's introduction to the sport, and his enthusiasm around Ali in those days, back in the late '60s, early '70s. And actually, I started training with a guy, Clint Martin, in Cleveland, Ohio, who was a prize fighting manager. He had a couple great fighters. He actually coached Team USA in the early '80s.
Oh wow!
Anyway, he was an assistant manager with them, I think, in the '84 Olympics. And he was convinced I could have been a world champion. I think he thought that because I took a lot of punches. But that wasn't after a while, that really wasn't my passion. I was like, this is a really hard sport. Not even just being in the ring. The training outside the ring and boxing is really tough. Yeah. But anyway, I had gravitated toward basketball, and ultimately our family moved from Ohio to Indiana, where there was such a love for basketball in this state when I was a 7th grader. And we actually listened more to the Cavs on the radio. We didn't really play a whole lot, although we liked to shoot baskets. But the competitiveness at the parks and around Indianapolis was unbelievable. And it really kind of catapulted us because we were playing against guys that were a lot better than us, which kind of helped us become better players ourselves as young kids.
So obviously when the game of basketball is not played by a lot of short people. I did not excel at the game, obviously at 5'9". And seeing kids now, you always have that kid that, gets, hits puberty first at, 11 or 12 or whatever, and they end up being 6 foot tall. And then sometimes you look at the parents and you're like, well, you're done, right? Because they're not. But then there's other folks where you just realize, wow, this kid could have a real potential because you can't coach height, right?
Right.
If you got it, you don't. When did you begin to grow into your stature where it was like, okay, this could be a real deal?
Yeah. So actually, when I moved to Indiana, I was 11-year-old, 7th grader, 6 feet tall.
Wow.
So I was tall.
Yeah.
I really wasn't very good. There was a gentleman, our coach at School 21, IPS School 21, who convinced me to play. And actually, I didn't get in any games that year. But I learned a lot of lessons, and I learned a lot in practice. We came back the next year, and he just told me to really concentrate more on defense. We'll work on the offensive part of the game. And because of my size then was 6'3", I was able to block shots, and I could run, so I could finish around the basket. And so really, that's what my talent led me to do at that age. But he could see it. I didn't really see it at first because, as a kid, when you're the biggest kid and you're not making all the points, you take a lot of ridicule. So, but I didn't let any of that discourage me. And I just kept at it. And we had success as a team, and I took that as a success for myself as well.
Yeah.
And it ultimately led me into high school, where in terms of the basketball and the academic piece, my parents helped me choose Cathedral High School to kind of help catapult not only my sport, but really the academic piece of it.
Yes.
And so I got to Cathedral High School. I was a 6'5" freshman.
Wow.
I played freshman basketball.
So wait, Ken, you have literally at every point in life have hit key points as a foot taller than me because I went into high school and I was 5'5". Okay. So I hadn't had my growth spurt yet for those 4 inches to get to 5'9". So you started high school at 6'5".
I did.
Okay.
I did. So I was 6'5", and I was still in the learning stages of playing. So unlike today, I think is a little bit more pressure on kids to play varsity right away.
Sure.
But anyway, I played freshman basketball. I had a great group of classmates, and we were like city champs my freshman year.
Wow. There's got to be, I think, Ken, for you, I don't know because I've never had to deal with growing like a foot a year or being that tall. But what I've even noticed with kids that do grow or are that tall is, I would guess, trying to figure out, just all the angles of I've got 6'5" worth of arms and legs of just, you know what I mean? The shooting angles, dribbling, everything. I think when you grow and have that big of a body, it takes a minute to grow into the coordination of it, I would guess, right?
You're absolutely correct. And I was like a newborn colt trying to figure out really my coordination, standing up, trying to become more fluid in the game and more comfortable playing the game. You're absolutely correct. So I took some growing pains. My sophomore year, which was monumental, a guy, Tom O'Brien, came to Cathedral High School. I was 6'7", and he told me, "You're going to play varsity." And I wasn't even sure I was ready. But he actually threw me into the fire, and I learned a lot. Got beat up a lot, took my lumps, but it was a really big growth year for me in terms of my confidence and my ability to really get my body under control. And I came back my junior year with a lot of confidence. And our team was really good, but we were young my junior year. Okay. But I went from being like a 6-point a game guy my sophomore year to like a 20-point game guy my junior year. So, but really the sophomore year really kind of gave me the confidence. So not only the physical piece, but the mental piece in terms of the sport that really helped me.
So at this point, Ken, you're 17, probably 16, 17?
16, yes.
Scoring 20 a game, you're 6'9".
I'm probably as big as I am now, yeah.
I'm guessing you're starting to get attention. There's a lot of talk about Ken Barlow and how good he is. Are you beginning to even dream about that next level, collegiate, professional? Is that starting to take shape within you?
Yeah, so my junior year was monumental in terms of my own goals and dreams and aspirations. Okay. I really felt my junior year, I was like, I really think I can play this game.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew that I was one of the top scorers in the city, one of the better players in the state. I was probably, if not the biggest, one of the top 3 tallest guys in Indiana.
Yeah.
And so that gave me a lot of confidence that way. And then my production really spoke for itself.
Yeah.
The team wasn't as successful, but we were still young. I was a junior. We didn't play any seniors that year.
Oh, wow.
And we had a bunch of sophomores and freshmen that were actually pretty good, who were going to be better the next year with my senior year. Okay. And that proved to be true. We came back the next year with a great supporting cast, and we actually set a school record. We were 27-3.
Oh, wow.
Should have been the state champions, but it didn't happen that way. We ran into a great player out of Plymouth, Indiana, Scott Skiles, who ultimately had a great career at college. But be that as it may, I played in a camp invitation only camp between my junior and my senior year. Okay. It's kind of like the Nike or All-American camps that they have now.
Yep.
And I went from being a top-notch player in the state of Indiana to a nationally known player across the country after I played like a week at the BC All-Star Camp. I was one of the top campers, and I went from being like maybe a top 10 player here to like a top 25 player in the country. Wow. Just playing against all of the guys who actually had credibility to their games. It really helped my confidence, and then all of the colleges really showed up at my front door and were offering me scholarships to go to schools from UCLA to Maryland to Notre Dame, Indiana. All those schools were offered. I probably had about 150 offers.
Wow.
Yes.
So at this point, now you know, like obviously I'm playing at the high school level. Now I know I've got 150 scholarship offers. Mm-hmm. College is a lock. I just got to choose where I want to go.
Right.
But were your eyes set on the horizon of NBA stardom, or was it like, well, I'll go to college and see what's going to happen here and get an education, or where were you setting your vision as far as the future?
After between my junior and senior year of high school, when I played well at the BC All-Star Camp and I went from a state player to a national player, I believed in my heart that I could be an NBA player at that point.
Yes.
Because the McDonald's All-American picked the top 25 players in the country.
Yeah.
And I was one of those guys. So the way I rationalized it in my head, I was thinking, if I can be a top 25 player in the next 4 years after I finish college, I'm a first-round draft pick.
Yeah.
And that's the way I processed it. So I had set my vision once I entered college to actually be that top 25 player like I was in high school, because I knew that the numbers get a lot tougher.
Yep.
The competition gets a lot tougher. But if I can continue to work hard and do what I'm supposed to do on the court, in the classroom, and with my social life, I thought that I could be a top 25 player, because I thought I had reached that pinnacle in high school.
Yeah.
Now I just need to reach the same pinnacle in college.
Yeah. And so I'm guessing everything began to streamline as far as focus. I mean, training, I'm sure, nutrition, everything. Would that become the driving focus of your life at that point?
Yes. So the goal was, so my dream was at that point when I entered my senior in high school was to be a pro, an NBA first-round draft pick after 4 years of college. So I wasn't a big guy. So even now I'm 235 pounds, but when I entered college, I was 205. So I knew I had some physical work to do.
Sure.
And I still had some skill work to do as well, because at 205 pounds, you really can't play center at the collegiate level.
Sure.
So I was moved from the 5 position, which is the center spot in high school, to playing like a combination 3-4, so small forward, power forward position in college. Okay. And then I had to learn a whole nother set of skill sets and defend a whole lot of different people, some of them out on the floor. So it was a learning curve there, but I was committed to go early, to stay late, and to do everything that I had to do to make sure that was possible.
Where was your dream college?
So I didn't really have a dream college.
Okay.
I didn't. I was just, I knew I was watching a lot of Indiana and Purdue games when I was in high school.
Okay.
So I was a big Bobby Knight fan. I was a big Landon Turner, Isaiah Thomas when they won the national championship.
Yeah.
But I was also a Joe Barry Carroll fan at Purdue. So just being in state and being an hour away from either one of those schools was really my goal. Notre Dame actually came on the scene. They didn't even recruit players from Indiana. They hadn't offered a scholarship to a player in 20 years.
Really?
When I signed my scholarship in 1982. So the last guy was, I think, Walt Some in 1961.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I didn't really know. I just kept my options open. And then, when schools like University of Maryland come or UCLA comes or Louisville comes, then I started doing my homework on those schools from a basketball perspective and from an academic perspective to see which was the best fit for me.
Right. And Notre Dame at West.
Yes.
Go Irish.
Go Irish.
So you get up to Notre Dame, hammer down, we're focused. We're going to finish college. We're going to go strong because we're going to go first round in the NBA.
Right.
And how did college work out?
Yeah, so it was tough right away. Coming in, I had to really check my ego, honestly, because I was a McDonald's All-American, but when I arrived on campus at Notre Dame, there were 5 other McDonald's All-Americans already ahead of me. And those guys could play.
Wow.
And that's one thing probably as a high school kid that you don't really realize.
Wow.
The talent level and the accolades that your teammates are going to have as well. So I walked right into my first practice, and I was like, wow, these guys are really good. And I have a lot of work to do, physically, skill-wise. I knew there was work to do, but my goal even my freshman year, because the coach was very honest with me. He told me, we think you need to be a little bit stronger. So basically, that was a subtle message saying you're not going to play right away. And in my heart, I was convinced I could. So I just set out and I made a plan. I said, you know what? Every running activity, every skill activity, my goal is to be first. And at the end of the day, after all the preseason, when the jump ball started, our first game, I was there in the starting lineup. So
Wow, okay.
I had my focus, and I was determined to do what I needed to do. And if I wasn't going to be in the starting lineup, it wasn't because I hadn't given my best effort.
See, what I love that you brought out there, because we're talking about, this whole series about the death of a dream when we chase them and they don't work out the way that we want. But there are also some things I want to pull out about from this story about what you do when you have a dream that you're willing, when you're passionate about something. That word passion, right, means paseo, means suffering. It means you're willing to suffer for it.
Right.
It means you're willing to put in the hard work. It means that you're not going to so I think about what you just, the points you've just brought out. You get there and there are, a bunch of other McDonald's All-Americans. Right. So I can choose to humble myself and work hard, or I can get, arrogant. I can choose an attitude, like all these things. I mean, you humbled yourself. You chose to suffer, for the goal, gave your all for what it is. All of those things, I think some people see, maybe they envy people that do accomplish dreams or do have the accolades, and they miss, there's some character attributes and hard work that are probably unseen that have to be done, or you don't get them in the first place.
No, that's absolutely correct. So I always challenged myself, and I was coached even by my parents, just not on the basketball court. They said the best you can do is give your best. Yeah. And that's not a judgment for anybody on the outside. You know within yourself,
that's right. Have
you given your best? So I just went out when I got to Notre Dame, not only to give my best on the court, but in the classroom, because ultimately I knew in sports, you never know how long your career will be. Yep. So I knew I had to continue to give that same effort in the classroom. So some classes were more challenging for me. I think if most people are honest, you find your way in college even in the classroom. So I said, I'm not going to, if it doesn't happen for me, it's not because I haven't given all that I have to give. And so that was my focus.
Well, your dad and my dad must have read the same book, because my dad would always say, time and time again, he would say, do your best, leave the rest to God.
Yes.
Right? And I've said it now probably hundreds of times to my boys of just, listen, you do your best, leave the rest. Right? That's all you can do.
Yeah. And actually, I tell you what, when you take that attitude, at least when I took that attitude, that even your teammates will extend a helping hand to you, because they will see that you're relentless and that you're going to give your best. But that's not only good for you, it's good for them as well.
Yes.
And so you can kind of help grow not only yourself, but you grow the team, the morale of the team, the focus of the team. So I always want to be around the people who are giving their best too, and they're encouraging me to give my best, because I'm going to encourage them to give their best.
Yes.
And we both can grow that way.
Yes.
And it takes a lot of passion, and it takes a lot of hard days. But those tribulations actually help us grow.
Yeah, absolutely, Ken. So we're chasing this dream now, basically 8 straight years. We get through Notre Dame, and I'm going to be an NBA first-round pick. Let's go. Senior year of college, you're ready to go after this.
Right.
Could you start to see the brass ring in the distance?
I could see it. Yeah. So my freshman year went well.
Okay.
My sophomore year, there were some hurdles to get over. But at the end of the day, I finished up on a really strong high. We finished second in the National Invitational Tournament. It was an all-tournament team. I got selected to go play on a European select team because I played well in that tournament as a sophomore.
Oh, wow.
It kind of catapulted me into my junior year. My junior year, we went from...
You got to go, and you went to Europe for that summer? Or?
I did, for that summer.
First time overseas?
It was my first time in Europe.
Okay.
My dad is a career military guy, so I started school in Japan, so I had that experience as well.
Okay.
But the European experience and the basketball experience playing with those guys the summer of '84, between my sophomore and junior year, was monumental. I didn't see that, but it was actually a big part of the foundation that kind of helped me make the choice that I made, because I had some exposure to the European market. And I wasn't completely green, and I did know some things. So anyway, I played that summer, catapulted me in my junior year. We ended up getting beat my junior year in the second round of the NCAA tournament by North Carolina on the last second shot. We should have went to the Sweet 16, but it was tough. But the year went well, and it catapulted me again into my senior year. I had a great senior year. Ultimately, we got another NCAA bid, but we were upset in the first round, which was kind of tough. but I had played well all year. I played well my sophomore, junior, and senior year. And I got, just like in high school, I got invites to the NBA pre-draft camps.
Okay.
So those showcase camps are always critical for athletes. It's kind of like the NFL Combine that they have here in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
So I went to the pre-draft camp. They had it in Aloha. It was the Aloha Classic in Hawaii, which was beautiful. But the focus was not the beach and the sand.
It was the court.
It was the court. And I went there, and a lot of guys, the John Sallies, the Scott Skiles, the Ron Harpers, all those guys were there. And I ended up being one of the better players out of, I think there were 30 players there on 4 teams. And I ended up being one of the better players that week. And
to play at your level, though, Ken, I'm guessing, like, I don't know because I'm not that good, but like, you knew you were good, and you know, obviously you've been playing against these guys in college or whatever. But what is it like if you're out there and like you're chasing your dream, you're living your dream, and like you get done with with a afternoon practice or game, and you realize, like, you know, some of the names you just, you know, Ron Harper, these guys, and you end up going like, I'm running with these guys, right? Like,
right.
What are those moments like?
You know, I actually, since you say it, on a very personal note, I just wanted, when I was playing with guys like John Sally or Ron Harper or Dennis Rodman and those guys, when I first met those guys out in Hawaii, for example, and we're all together, I wanted to like call my friends from my neighborhood and say, hey, man, can you believe it? I mean, it's almost like you got to touch yourself, honestly. You know, it's really, and I think they felt the same way. I think most athletes at that level, I mean, you have a few guys that are arrogant about it, but I think most guys are really trying to make their impact. And there's just as much in awe of you as you are of them. So
they're respecting your game as well.
They are. They really are.
I guess back in the day, then you couldn't like take selfies with each other and stuff like that. No. Phone technology wasn't quite there.
No, it wasn't. I envy those kids today who have that at their disposal. But yeah, back in those days, it was like if you had a little Polaroid camera, that kind of those throwaway cameras that you can take to get film developed overnight. Yeah, that's what we did. Yeah.
So you get there to Hawaii, you play great. Next up is the draft.
That's right. So, you know, you come out of those places and you know if you're a hot commodity or not, because like for me, I knew things were going well because I had every agent in the country calling me and they're telling me they want to represent me. So you're trying to figure that piece of it out. And they're all telling you, you know, they're pretty much projecting where you're going to go because they're talking to all the NBA people.
Sure.
And so I was getting great feedback, and people were saying that I was going to go anywhere between the middle of the first round to late first round. And then you go through the whole process of getting invited to go to NBA interviews. So teams start calling you who have picks around the place you're projected to play. Okay. And so I went on trips to Philadelphia, Denver, and Milwaukee. They all had picks between like 17 and 24 or something like that. And you talk to them and they interview you. They want to see what kind of person you are. Not just on the back. They know what kind of player you are, but they want to see what kind of person you are and if you're fit. And so you have all those conversations, and you don't know exactly, but you have a pretty good feel before the draft comes, like where you're going to go. So Denver actually told me that we're going to take you 17 if another player's off the board. And I was watching the draft board, and it was just falling in line exactly like I was predicting. And then a guy, Harold Presley from Villanova, who's a great player, I had seen him at like 22, 23. And he jumped up and went like 16th to Sacramento. Okay. And I thought the player from Duke, who Denver wanted, but they said if they can't get him, they're going to draft me. He was still on the board. So I was like, you need to be off the board, but he wasn't. And they took him. So then at that point, after 17, when I didn't know who was going to take me, and Philadelphia, who I visited, actually traded their picks away. So I was like, I didn't know. Happening? Yeah, I didn't know what was going on, but ultimately, the Lakers selected me with the 23rd pick of the draft that year.
First round.
Yeah, and it was like Christmas. I mean, my brother, you know, you're watching the Lakers in the 80s. And it's Showtime.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they got a great, I guess they got the great film on HBO now.
Yeah, I've seen the highlights. I've not watched it yet.
Right. So I'm like right in the middle of that. You know, it's Michael Cooper, Bob McAdoo, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah.
I mean, when the draft, when David Stern announced my name on TV, because I didn't go to New York, we were watching TV. My brother and I were like running around the house, like, man, can you believe this? Oh my God, you're going to LA. You're going to LA.
Wow.
So it was just, it was just like that was the dream. You know, the dream was, and I couldn't even imagine that it would been the Lakers. I didn't even talk to the Lakers. Right, but they were in that area, the pick between the 18 and 24. So the Lakers selected me. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, I mean, I would have been happy with really anybody.
Yeah.
But then it's the world champion Lakers. And I'm thinking, oh man, I was like, can you believe this? But anyway, a little bit of the dream kind of crashed in just a little bit. It wasn't very much. My phone rang at my parents' house because you share all your contact information. My phone rang at my parents' house. And the voice on the line said, is this Ken? I was like, yeah, this is Ken. And he said, this is Stan Kasten with the Atlanta Hawks. So I immediately said, hey, nice to meet you, Mr. Kasten, but I believe you have the wrong number.
I just got drafted by the Lakers. Right, maybe you're not watching.
Right. He goes, no, I'm watching. He goes, I'm watching. He goes, we traded for you before the draft. We did a deal with the Lakers to swap picks. So I don't know if you've ever seen that. You've probably seen that on. Yeah. So they had swapped the pick, and I was like, are you kidding me? He goes, no, you're an Atlanta Hawk now. I was like, oh, I said, that's still great. I said, I just thought I was a Laker. He said, no, they will announce it right before they start the second round. And surely enough, the commissioner comes out, there's been a trade.
Yeah.
And but still, the dream was the NBA. So even if it wasn't the Lakers, I was very happy to be an Atlanta Hawk at that particular point.
So that night, your head hits the pillow.
Yes.
This has been something in my life since, 11 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, amazing high school, focus and career, scholarship to Notre Dame. I got a degree. I've played through the tournament. I've all this, and here it is. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to be my first round draft pick NBA. Right. I'm going to be an NBA star. This is what's going to happen. Right.
I was thinking I was really pinching myself, and I was thinking, and I knew the business behind it. I knew that 99% of first round picks, and I was one of those people who you get offered a guaranteed deal.
Yeah.
Right. So that first night, I was like, oh my God, I was like, this really came true. Like, I'm really at the door. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of just signing this deal and showing up at practice and taking the next step into professional basketball. This is the step. This is where I want to be. And I mean, just the feeling, the euphoric feeling that you have. It was just, I still can feel it right now. It's like an unbelievable feeling. And I couldn't really believe it. I mean, my brother and I talked about it, and it was kind of a funny story. My grandmother, who was sick at the time, I went to see her in the hospital. And, I didn't think she understood anything about basketball, but I went to see her. And so she introduced me to her caregivers, and she said, this is my grandson, Ken Barlow. He's an Atlanta Laker Hawk. I was like, I think you're right.
That's a new team, Grandma.
right. I said, it makes sense. I said, not quite right, but I understand what you're saying. But anyway, It was like that. Even when she said that to me, I was like, man, I said, we made it to the NBA.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really the very next day after the draft. I was like, yep, even Grandma knows it's the NBA stores right there for us.
Okay. Yeah. I love it. And I think that's, I love us sharing the joy of that moment. And you saying even right now, you can feel it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's that's one of the reasons to chase dreams, I think, that God places in our hearts, right? Because the joy that's contained within them. But as we're going to start unpacking some more of the story, it's also the part that makes when they don't work out the way we think they're going to.
Right.
Why that makes it so painful. And I think sometimes if you're watching this episode of the podcast and you're still in that process of dealing with the pain of the death of a dream, I think sometimes you got to go back to the joy that it brought you to understand why the pain actually hurts and why it may be something that's difficult to get over and why, to not beat yourself up for why am I still, thinking about that, fill in the blank of whatever it is. If you haven't seen God bring, the redemption of a new plan, is the joy is real and it should be celebrated because it's an amazing moment, whatever the dream was. Right. When you get to fulfill it, man, those moments are they're priceless.
They are. They really are priceless. Second to none, really. I mean, you got me excited again just talking about that. I mean, the NBA, I mean, we talked about your kids. I mean, millions of kids across the country have that dream.
Yes.
And I was one of those kids. And I got right to the door and ecstatic. I mean, I really was. I was really ecstatic. I was like, I'm going to have that Jerry West logo on my chest. And I'm going to be flying city to city just playing basketball.
Yeah.
And someone's going to pay me to do that as a living. I was like, that's it. Yeah. That's what I want to do. Yeah. And we'll see how long we can do that. Right. And anyway, that was it. I still feel it right now. It's I can relive that moment over and over again. I don't know if I'm even articulating it well enough to even share like how big when you dream your biggest dream and it comes true.
Wow.
Like my biggest dream at the moment was to be a first round draft pick. and it happened, I was like, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, really, thank you, Jesus. Like,
Yeah.
I really, like, the hard work has paid off. All of the overtime, early times, rest, diet, exercise, you know, saying no to all the things that are negative to me reaching that goal.
Yeah.
I was like, it was worth it, and I'm here. And yes. And yes. And then I had to deal with the reality of when we started talking about the business part of it, like, is this really where I'm supposed to be?
So let's go there, Ken. And what we'll do, what I want to do is I want to get to that point, and I want to get that part of the story, and then I want us to push pause on this episode, and we're going to come back in the second half and really unpack how God began to open doors that you know. I don't want to steal the thunder from the backside of the story, because It is remarkable, but I do want to walk through, you know, the months of realizing, wait a second, like I grasped the dream,
Right.
but it was brief, and I think it might be dying right now.
Right.
Take us through that.
Yes. So we get right to the door, and I'll give you a little bit of the basketball background. At the time, my agent was advising me. It's a little bit different today. Anyway, we can get to that later. But at the time, first-round draft picks did not play in mini camps before they were signed. So I was one of those guys. But the Hawks invited me to their mini camp. They wanted to talk to me about the season, where I fit into the team. So anyway, I went up to Ontario, Canada, for the mini camp with the Hawks, and a few other teams were there. I think 4 or 5 other teams were there. And I sat down at dinner with the general manager and the coach, and they started talking about my role. So the conversation immediately started. We're happy to have you as our first-round pick. And they gave me everything that I'd done in college and the reason why they traded for me. But then they said, we have a very young team. We have one of the youngest teams in NBA. We have 5 other forwards in front of you at the moment. And we're coming off a franchise record number of winnings. And we're not planning on changing our lineup. So my immediate question was, so why did you trade for me?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, I'm a forward. You have 5 young forwards you love, and they're great. I mean, the guys like Dominique Wilkins, Antoine Carr, Cliff Livingston, those guys, they were great players. So I was like, okay, so you drafted another forward. You don't need a forward. You're coming off a franchise record number of wins, so you don't want to break up your lineup. So basically you're telling me I'm not going to play regardless unless something tragic happens. And I had to really think about that. I was like, okay, I think I can prove myself. I don't really have a problem with putting in my work again to prove myself.
Yeah.
But then they told me when it came to the business side of it, we're offering you a 1-year guaranteed and an option year, our option. So basically we'll see how it goes. So I had to process that. Does this really make sense? Like, I can sign this guaranteed deal for this year.
Right.
And they're going to be evaluating me basically on my practice time to see if I get the second year.
Right.
Right. Unless something tragic happens and I get a chance to play.
Yeah.
Which, you know, with 5 guys in front of you, maybe 2.
Yes.
But 5.
Yeah, 5. You're gonna have to have. That's gonna be some like major situation.
Yes. So I quite frankly, I said a lot of prayers about it, and I started talking to God about it. I said, okay, God, I'm at this point. I think this is my dream, but it doesn't really seem like this is where I should be because I can actually take this guaranteed deal. So I was needing some direction. Right? I wanted to take the deal, but then I thought that it was a dead end street. I was thinking, I know that basketball players need to play. Our athletes need to play to stay employed. So I started processing it like that. So my agent and I tried to convince Atlanta to make it 2 years an option. So, you know, you have a little bit more time, and they didn't really budge. So then my agent came to me and he said, well, I'm not sure what you want to do, but he said, what I'm going to do, my job, and I'm going to share with you that I have a couple of options for you to play basketball in Europe. Would you at least consider that? He said, maybe it's a little leverage, and maybe Atlanta will think, you know, you're going to leave because players at the time weren't leaving to go to Europe to play. So I said, okay. So he presented a couple options, and he goes, what do you think? And I thought about where God had already taken me. for example, 2 years earlier, I had been to Europe.
Yeah.
As a kid, I had traveled around. I had seen a lot of different cultures and people.
You were already kind of a globally minded person.
Right, I was. So I was really open to that, which kind of helped my situation. I don't think Atlanta thought that I was really that open to doing that. So my agent actually presented to them, if we can't work this thing out to work this deal out a little bit better, Ken's considering going to Europe to play. And so we played this tug of war game for a little while. It was kind of a cat and mouse. Who's going to flinch first? And ultimately, I was like, okay, listen, it's really we're in September. It's about time for NBA training camp. We don't have a deal. We're going to ask God to let's do something else. So I prayed to God. I said, listen, God, I didn't think I was going to take this deal to go to Italy and play, but for me, I was thinking of it. It's going to be an opportunity to play. It's going to be in a great city to play. And it's going to be with some great people that my agent had already shared with me. I didn't know any of those people personally other than Bob McAdoo, who was actually a Laker. My agent told me they're going to sign Bob McAdoo. Then there was a guy, Mike D'Antoni, who was the former assistant coach with the Brooklyn Nets and Los Angeles Lakers as the head coach.
Yeah.
He'll be a point guard. They have an American coach. They have 4 other guys who speak English, so your transition. So I was like, okay, this is maybe not as big a deal as maybe God is telling me to go there. And so ultimately I signed the deal to go. And I knew when I got on that plane, I had a little bit of experience, but I knew that if I took God with me, I knew great things could happen. Honestly, I was like, I'm going with my Creator, and we're going to see what's happening over here.
Yeah.
Even though I had a little bit of experience, I didn't have a lot, but I had some. But I knew that if I kept my focus and I kept my faith in front, that I knew that God would bless me with something spectacular. Yeah.
We're going to push pause right there. We're going to come back to the second half of Ken's story. Ken, you have a book where you unpack a lot of the story. Tell us what the book's called.
So the book's called First Round Pick, The Path Least Chosen.
Okay.
Yes.
So you can get that on Amazon?
You can get it on Amazon.
Okay.
Or you can go to my website, www.kennethbarlow.com. It's there as well.
Okay. Go check out the book and then come back next week. We're going to unpack the rest of the story because you trusted that God had something for you. You stepped away from that dream. You watched it die, but God resurrected something pretty amazing over the next 16 years across the world. You don't want to miss the second half of this story. I can't wait for it. Right on the Daron Earlewine Podcast. And don't forget, every single week I tell you this, God's for you, not against you. He's near you, not far away. And He's created you on purpose and for a purpose. We'll catch you guys next week.